Ambassador Kira Voss stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the gleaming floors of the Grand Conclave Station. The massive structure orbited the neutral world of Axis 7, a place where no single species held power. It was perfect for diplomatic meetings. She adjusted her formal robes and glanced around at the other delegations arriving for the annual Galactic Council Summit. The station's main hall was enormous. Crystal pillars reached up to a transparent dome that showed the stars beyond. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered here, each bringing their own guards and customs. Kira had attended 5 of these summits before. She knew what to expect. The Kravik delegation arrived first, their guards stomping in formation. Each Kravik stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray scales. Their ceremonial war axes hung from their belts, polished to a mirror shine. The weapons were mostly for show, but everyone knew a Kravik could split a tree trunk with one swing. They were warriors by nature and proud of it. Next came the Zinthari, a race of 6-limbed beings who moved with liquid grace. Their guards carried plasma staffs that hummed with contained energy. The staffs could project shields or fire bolts of superheated matter. Zinthari guards were trained from birth in their use. The Thelian delegation, Kira's own people, had guards armed with pulse pistols. Small but effective. The Thelians believed in practical weapons for practical purposes. No need for show, and efficiency worked better. One by one, the delegations filed into the Grand Hall. Each brought armed guards. It was tradition. It showed strength and readiness. Even at peace talks, everyone understood that weapons were part of diplomatic theater. They sent a message about capability and resolve. Then the human delegation arrived. Kira watched them enter with curiosity. Humans were still new to the council. They had only joined 40 years ago, after finally developing faster-than-light travel. Many of the elder species still viewed them as children, barely out of their own solar system. Some saw them as primitive. Others found their planet's violent history disturbing. But what caught Kira's attention now was something else entirely. The human guards wore formal uniforms in dark blue with gold trim. They walked with perfect discipline, 3 guards surrounding their ambassador, a woman with dark skin and gray-streaked hair. The guards stood tall and alert, their eyes scanning the crowd constantly, but they carried no weapons, no guns, no blades, no energy staffs or plasma projectors, not even ceremonial daggers, just their uniforms and their empty hands. Kira heard whispers around her. Other delegates had noticed too. The Kravik delegation burst into rough laughter. One of their warriors, a scarred veteran named Thrask, pointed at the humans and said something to his companions. They laughed harder. "Look at the humans," someone muttered behind Kira. "They come to the council unarmed like children to a feast. Perhaps they truly are as weak as their appearance suggests," another voice replied. "Soft skin, fragile bones, no natural weapons at all. They probably fear their own guns might hurt them." Kira frowned. She had read the reports about humans. Their planet Earth had a brutal history, thousands of years of constant warfare, nuclear weapons, chemical weapons. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. These were not a peaceful species by nature. So why did their guards carry nothing? The human ambassador, Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, according to the name badge, approached the registration desk. Her 3 guards moved with her, maintaining a precise formation. Kira studied them more carefully now. All 3 were human males. One was tall with dark hair and Asian features. Another was shorter with brown skin and a shaved head. The third had pale skin and red hair tied back in a neat ponytail. The tall one particularly caught her attention. His name badge read Marcus Chen. He stood relaxed but somehow coiled, like a spring waiting to release. His eyes never stopped moving. He looked at every exit, every delegate, every guard in the hall. Not with fear or nervousness. With calculation. Kira had seen that look before. It was the look of a predator assessing its environment. The Kravik warrior Thrask deliberately walked toward the human delegation. He veered at the last moment, shoulder-checking Marcus Chen hard as he passed. It was an old dominance game. Test the weak newcomer, see if they would react. Chen stumbled slightly from the impact. Thrask outweighed him by at least 200 pounds. The other Kravik warriors watched, expecting the human to either back down in submission or react with anger. Either response would be amusing to them. Marcus Chen did neither. He simply stepped aside, straightened his uniform, and resumed his position. His face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, No embarrassment. He just looked at Thrask with those calculating eyes for one moment, then returned his attention to scanning the room. The lack of reaction seemed to confuse Thrask more than a fight would have. "Coward," Thrask muttered, though not quite loud enough for the humans to hear. He walked away, disappointed, but Kira kept watching Marcus Chen. Something about his response felt wrong. Not wrong like a mistake, wrong like a puzzle piece that did not fit the picture everyone else was seeing. She had expected either fear or anger. She had seen neither. What she had seen was restraint, controlled, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly what they were capable of and chose not to demonstrate it. Over the next few hours, all the delegations settled into their assigned quarters. The summit would last 5 days. The first day was always dedicated to arrivals and informal greetings. Real business would begin tomorrow. Kira found herself watching the human guards whenever they appeared. They were always alert, always positioned to protect their ambassador. But there was something else she noticed. They moved differently than other guards. Most guards stood still at attention, hands on weapons, projecting strength through stillness. The human guards were never quite still. They shifted weight subtly. Their eyes tracked movement constantly. They positioned themselves not just to guard, but to have clear paths in multiple directions. It was as if they were always preparing for something, but preparing for what? They had no weapons to draw, no tools to deploy. What could unarmed guards actually do if trouble arose? That evening, she attended a reception in the station's grand dining hall. Delegates mingled, discussing tomorrow's agenda in informal settings. The human ambassador spoke with the Zenthari delegation head, discussing trade agreements. Marcus Chen stood 3 paces behind her, silent and watchful. Kira approached with a glass of Thelian wine. "Ambassador Okonkwo," she said with a polite nod. "I am Ambassador Kira Voss of the Thelian Concordat. Welcome to your first summit." Sarah Okonkwo smiled warmly. "Thank you, Ambassador Voss. I have heard excellent things about the Thelian people. Your work on the Frontier Medical Initiative has saved countless lives." They spoke pleasantly for several minutes about neutral topics, but Kira's curiosity finally got the better of her diplomatic training. "Forgive my directness," she said, "but I could not help noticing your guards carry no weapons. Is this a human custom I am unfamiliar with?" Sarah's smile did not fade, but something shifted in her eyes. "It is our policy for diplomatic missions," she said carefully. "We believe that bringing weapons to peace talks sends the wrong message. But every other delegation brings armed guards," Kira pointed out. "It is tradition. It shows capability." "Perhaps," Sarah replied, "but we prefer to show our capability in other ways." Before Kira could ask what that meant, another delegate interrupted with a question about mining rights. The conversation moved on, but as Kira walked away later, she glanced back at Marcus Chen one more time. He was looking directly at her. For just a moment, their eyes met. And in that moment, Kira felt something she had not expected to feel from an unarmed guard standing across a peaceful reception hall. She felt like prey being watched by a hunter. The feeling passed instantly as Chen looked away, returning to his scanning pattern. But Kira could not shake the impression. There was something about the humans that everyone was missing. Something important. She just did not know what it was yet. 3 days into the summit, tensions had grown thick enough to cut with a blade. The council chambers sat in the center of the station, a circular room with seats arranged in tiers. Representatives from 43 species argued about mining rights in a region called the Disputed Rim, rich in rare minerals, claimed by multiple species and the source of endless conflict. Kira sat in the Thelian section, listening to the Kravik ambassador pound his fist on the podium. "These systems belong to our ancestors. We have historical claims going back 3,000 years. The Zenthari representative countered immediately. "Historical claims mean nothing when your ancestors only passed through that space. Our people established actual settlements there first." Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo sat quietly in the human section, making notes on her datapad. Marcus Chen stood behind her, along with the other 2 human guards. Still unarmed, still watching everything with those calculating eyes. The argument continued. Voices rose. The chamber moderator, an elderly Quellan with silver tendrils, called for calm repeatedly. This was normal for day 3. Everyone knew the real negotiations happened in private meetings later. But the public arguments had to play out first. Political theater for the folks back home. Then everything changed. The alarm started as a low wailing sound that quickly rose to a piercing shriek. Red emergency lights flooded the chamber, replacing the normal soft glow. The massive entrance doors slammed shut automatically, emergency protocols engaging. Security breach, a mechanical voice announced through the speakers. Security breach in progress. All delegates remain in place. Guards to defensive positions. Chaos erupted immediately. Delegates jumped from their seats. Guards drew weapons, plasma bolts charging with high-pitched whines. The Kravik warriors roared battle cries and hefted their axes. Everyone moved at once with no coordination, creating a confused mass of bodies and weapons. Kira's own guards pushed her toward the floor, pulse pistols drawn and aimed at the doors. She crouched low, heart pounding. Security breaches were not supposed to be possible on Conclave Station. The defenses were legendary. Multiple shield layers, heavy guard presence, scanning systems that could detect a weapon through 6 inches of solid steel. An explosion rocked the chamber from the far side. A section of the floor erupted upward, sending debris flying. Smoke poured from the hole. Through the smoke came figures in combat armor, moving fast and firing weapons. Purifiers, someone screamed. Kira's blood went cold. The Purifiers were a multi-species radical group opposed to expansion into what they called sacred territories. They believed the disputed Rim and several other regions should remain untouched by civilization. They had bombed mining facilities before, killed researchers, sabotaged ships, but they had never struck at the Council itself. At least a dozen Purifiers climbed from the maintenance tunnel they had breached. They wore sealed combat suits that hid their species. Each carried military-grade plasma rifles, not ceremonial weapons. They spread out with tactical precision, taking cover behind the chamber's stone pillars. The diplomatic guards returned fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the chamber in brilliant blue and green lines. The Zenthari guards projected their energy shields, creating barriers. The Kravik warriors charged forward with their axes, roaring defiance. It was a disaster. The guards were prepared for ceremony, not combat. They were diplomats playing soldier, not actual soldiers. Their movements were uncoordinated. Some fired at targets their allies were blocking. Others froze in confusion. The Purifiers, clearly experienced fighters, picked them off methodically. A Zenthari guard fell, his shield flickering out as plasma burned through his shoulder. A Thelian guard near Kira took a bolt to the leg and went down screaming. The Kravik warriors made it halfway to the Purifiers before concentrated fire forced them back behind cover. The Purifiers advanced steadily, firing in controlled bursts. They had clearly planned this. They knew the layout. They knew the response protocols. Someone had given them detailed intelligence about Council security. Kira pressed herself flat against the floor behind her guards. Around the chamber, delegates huddled in terror. Some were wounded. Blood and strange alien fluids pooled on the pristine floors. The smell of burning flesh and ozone filled the air. Then she remembered the humans. She lifted her head slightly, looking toward the human section. Ambassador Okonkwo was crouched behind her seat, datapad abandoned. But the 3 human guards were not cowering. They were not frozen in panic, they were moving. Marcus Chen tapped the other 2 guards on their shoulders in quick succession. Some kind of signal. All 3 nodded once. Then they left their ambassador's side and started forward, walking directly toward the Purifiers. "What are they doing?" Kira whispered in horror. "They have no weapons." One of her guards glanced over. "The humans are insane. They will be killed." The Purifiers saw them coming. 2 Purifiers turned their rifles toward the approaching humans. At this range, with military weapons, it would be a slaughter. The humans did not even have cover between them and the attackers. Marcus Chen broke into a run. It happened so fast that Kira's mind struggled to process it. One moment Chen was walking. The next moment he was sprinting, moving faster than she thought humans could move. He did not run straight. He zigzagged, dropped, rolled, came up still moving. Plasma bolts tracked him but could not quite catch up. The Purifier adjusted his aim, leading the target properly this time. His finger tightened on the trigger. At this distance he could not miss. Marcus Chen was suddenly not where he was supposed to be. He had jumped, pushing off a fallen chair and launching himself through the air at an angle. The plasma bolt passed through empty space where his chest had been a heartbeat before. Chen landed in a roll 3 feet from the Purifier, came up inside the rifle's firing arc. too close for the weapon to track. What happened next took perhaps 2 seconds, maybe 3. Kira would replay it in her mind for years and still not quite believe it. Chen's hand struck the purifier's wrist with precise force. Bone broke with an audible crack even over the sound of weapons fire. The rifle tumbled from nerveless fingers. Chen caught it before it hit the ground, spun it around, and slammed the stock into the purifier's helmet. The attacker dropped like a stone. Chen had the rifle up and firing before the body hit the floor. The other 2 human guards had also reached the purifiers by different paths. They moved like Chen, impossibly fast and precise. They dodged plasma fire that should have killed them. They closed distances that should have been suicide to cross. They took weapons from the attackers with brutal efficiency. One guard broke a purifier's arm and took his rifle in a single smooth motion. The other disarmed his target with a spinning kick that sent the weapon flying, then caught it and turned it on the other attackers. Now armed with the purifier's own weapons, the 3 human guards became something terrifying. They did not fight like the ceremonial guards. They fought like soldiers, real soldiers, the kind who had trained for combat their entire lives. They moved as one unit with perfect coordination. When one fired, the others advanced. When one reloaded, the others provided cover. They used the chamber's pillars for tactical advantage, never staying in one place, always moving. Plasma bolts flew from their captured rifles with devastating accuracy. They did not spray fire wildly. Each shot had a target, and each target went down. Purifiers fell one after another. Some tried to retreat back to the tunnel. The humans cut them off. Some tried to take hostages. The humans were already positioned to prevent it. 90 seconds after Marcus Chen had started his sprint, it was over. 12 purifiers lay on the ground, either unconscious or wounded. None were dead, Kira realized with shock. The humans had deliberately used non-lethal shots when possible, disabling rather than killing. 3 purifiers were face down with hands bound, 1 human guard holding them all at gunpoint, while the other 2 swept the chamber for remaining threats. The ceremonial guards were still fumbling with their weapons, just now organizing a proper response. Station security burst through the doors with rifles ready, prepared for a battle. They found the situation already resolved. Silence fell over the council chambers. Delegates slowly emerged from cover, staring in disbelief at the 3 human guards who now stood watch over their prisoners. Marcus Chen held his captured rifle with casual competence, barrel pointed safely at the floor, finger off the trigger. Professional, controlled. He was not even breathing hard. Ambassador Okonkwo slowly stood, straightening her formal robes. She looked at her guards and nodded once. Status? All threats neutralized, Ambassador, Chen replied calmly. No delegates harmed. 3 prisoners secured for interrogation. 9 attackers require medical attention. Good work, she said simply, as if they had just filed a report rather than taken down a dozen armed terrorists while unarmed themselves. Kira stared at the humans, her mind reeling. She had just watched 3 unarmed guards defeat 12 attackers armed with military weapons. She had watched them move like nothing she had ever seen, fight with precision that made trained warriors look like children. And she suddenly understood why the humans carried no weapons to diplomatic meetings. They did not need them. Station security had taken control of the council chambers. Medical teams worked on the wounded while forensic specialists examined the breach point. The captured purifiers sat in restraint fields awaiting interrogation. Delegates clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. Kira could not stop replaying the fight in her mind. The speed, the precision, the way Marcus Chen and the other human guards had moved. It defied everything she thought she knew about combat. She had seen Kravik warriors train since childhood. She had watched Zentari masters practice with their energy staffs. She knew what skilled fighters looked like. The humans had been something else entirely, something beyond skill. It was as if violence was coded into their very bones. The Kravik warrior Thrask approached the human guards where they stood watch. His earlier mockery was gone, replaced by something like respect, or perhaps fear. "You fight well for ones who carry no weapons," he said gruffly. Marcus Chen nodded politely. "Thank you." "How?" Thrask asked. "You were unarmed. They had military rifles. You should have died." "We adapted," Chen replied simply. "We used what was available." "But the way you moved," Thrask pressed. The way you fought, that was not adaptation. That was training. Advanced training. Years of it. Chen said nothing, but his slight smile suggested Thrask was correct. Kira decided she needed answers. She made her way through the crowd toward Ambassador Okonkwo, who was speaking with station security officials. When there was a break in the conversation, Kira approached. "Ambassador Okonkwo," she said formally. "May I speak with you privately?" Sarah studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. Perhaps we could use one of the side chambers." They walked to a small meeting room off the main chamber, guards from both delegations standing watch outside. Once the door closed, Kira did not waste time on diplomacy. "What are your guards?" she demanded. They fought like soldiers. Elite soldiers, not ceremonial diplomatic escorts. Sarah settled into a chair and gestured for Kira to do the same. "They are soldiers," she admitted. "Former military personnel, all of them, specially selected and trained for diplomatic protection duty. But they carry no weapons," Kira said. "Why would you send elite soldiers to guard your ambassadors but give them no tools?" "Because bringing weapons to peace talks implies you expect war," Sarah replied calmly. "We wanted to send a different message. We come prepared for peace but trained for anything." "Prepared for peace?" Kira's voice rose. "I watched them take down armed terrorists with their bare hands. That is not peace. That is controlled violence." "Yes," Sarah agreed. Controlled being the important word. "Ambassador Voss, do you know much about human history?" Kira hesitated. "I have read the basic reports. Your planet has a violent past. Many wars." "Many is an understatement," Sarah said quietly. "We have been fighting each other since before recorded history. For food, for territory, for resources, for beliefs, for no reason at all sometimes. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet dozens of times over. We came very close to using them." She pulled out her data pad and brought up some images. "We evolved as persistence hunters. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We do not have natural weapons like claws or venom, but we can track prey for days until it collapses from exhaustion. We can throw projectiles with accuracy that most species find impossible. And we can adapt to almost any environment or situation." Sarah showed Kira images from human history. Ancient warriors with stone weapons, medieval knights in armor, soldiers from various eras carrying increasingly sophisticated guns. "We have been perfecting the art of violence for hundreds of thousands of years. It is in our nature. But so is cooperation. So is peace. We chose which nature to follow." "So your guards," Kira said slowly, "they are trained in this violence?" "Extensively," Sarah confirmed. "Every human diplomatic guard must complete 12 years of military service first. They learn combat in every form, armed and unarmed, every weapon system from every species we have encountered. They study tactics and strategy. They train in environments from underwater to zero gravity to toxic atmospheres." She pulled up a file on Marcus Chen. Marcus served in the Earth Defense Forces for 15 years before joining the Diplomatic Corps. He has trained in 43 different martial arts from various human cultures. He can use over 200 different weapon systems. He has certifications in xenopsychology, threat assessment, and crisis negotiation. He speaks 9 languages, including 3 alien ones. Kira stared at the file in disbelief. "All that training just to stand guard at meetings?" "Not just to stand guard," Sarah corrected. "To prevent problems before they start. To de-escalate conflicts. To read situations and people. And yes, as a last resort, to protect lives when all else fails. But the most important part of their training is not the combat. It is the restraint." "Restraint?" Sarah nodded seriously. "Every human diplomatic guard undergoes extensive psychological evaluation. They must prove they will only use force as an absolute last resort. They must demonstrate discipline and judgment under pressure. We do not want warriors who are eager to fight. We want protectors who are capable of violence but wise enough to avoid it." She looked toward the door where her guards stood watch. Marcus could have killed every one of those purifiers. His training and reflexes make him fully capable of lethal force. But he chose not to. He disabled them, secured them for justice. That choice, that restraint in the middle of combat, is what makes him truly elite. Kira sat back, processing this information. "You said they can use any weapon system. How is that possible? There are thousands of different designs across the galaxy. Humans are exceptionally good at learning and adapting," Sarah explained. "Give us a new tool and we will figure it out. It is how we survived on Earth." We adapted to ice ages and droughts. We learned to use fire and tools. We took the technology of others and improved it. That adaptability is our greatest strength. A thought struck Kira. The purifiers had inside information. They knew our security protocols. They knew what weapons our guards carried, but they did not know about the humans. Exactly, Sarah said with a thin smile. They planned for guards with specific weapons and training. They planned for ceremonial warriors who were not real soldiers. They did not plan for adaptable fighters who could turn their own weapons against them. But why? Kira asked. Why go to such lengths to appear weak when you are strong? Sarah's expression grew serious. Because we remember our history, Ambassador Voss. We remember what happens when everyone brings weapons to the table. When everyone shows strength through threat, it creates an arms race. Everyone brings bigger weapons to prove they are stronger. Fear escalates. Eventually, someone fires first. She gestured to the chamber beyond. Look at what happened today. Guards with weapons created crossfire. They endangered the very delegates they were meant to protect. Their weapons became liabilities in close quarters. But my guards with no weapons of their own could move freely. They became the weapons themselves, but weapons with conscience and control. Kira thought about the Kravik warriors charging in with axes, the Zenthari guards firing their plasma staffs wildly, her own guards shooting without clear targets. Sarah was right. The armed guards had been more dangerous than helpful in the actual crisis. We are the weapons, Sarah continued, but weapons with discipline. Weapons that think, weapons that choose, and most importantly, weapons that prefer never to be used at all. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus Chen stepped in. Ambassador Okonkwo, Station Security, would like to debrief us about the incident. Of course, Sarah said, standing. She looked at Kira. Will you be joining us, Ambassador Voss? Kira nodded, rising as well. As they walked toward the briefing room, she studied Marcus Chen with new eyes. He looked so normal. Average height for a human, fit but not unusually muscular. Nothing about his appearance suggested the lethal capability she had witnessed. That, she realized, was the point. The briefing room was crowded. Station Security Chief Vornar, a massive Zenthari with scars from a dozen battles, stood at the head of the table. Various security officers and delegate representatives filled the seats. The 3 human guards stood at attention along one wall. Let us begin, Vornar said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard speech. We have reviewed the security footage and interviewed witnesses. The purifiers used maintenance access tunnels that should have been sealed. They had detailed knowledge of our patrol schedules, weapon placements, and response protocols. He brought up a holographic display showing the tunnels. This was not a simple attack. This was a sophisticated infiltration that required inside information from multiple systems. How many casualties? Someone asked. 3 guards wounded, none seriously. 6 delegates with minor injuries from debris, all expected to recover fully. Vornar's eye stalk swiveled toward the humans. Thanks largely to the rapid response of the human guards who neutralized the attackers before significant casualties occurred. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some species representatives looked uncomfortable. The humans had proven capable in ways that made older council members uneasy. I have questions about the human response, Thrask rumbled. They were unarmed. How did... The medical bay hummed with activity as doctors from various species treated the wounded. The injuries were mostly minor, thankfully. Plasma burns, broken bones from falling debris, shock and trauma. Nothing that modern medical technology could not fix easily. Kira sat on a bench outside the medical bay, data pad in her lap, reviewing files she had requested about human history and training. What she read both fascinated and disturbed her. The humans had been fighting for so long that they had developed thousands of different combat styles. They had weapons museums containing devices designed solely to kill other humans in creative ways. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about war. Yet they had also developed complex peace treaties, international laws, and philosophical traditions dedicated to ending violence. They were a species of contradictions, capable of terrible cruelty and beautiful compassion in equal measure. Ambassador Voss, she looked up to find Marcus Chen approaching, out of his formal uniform now and wearing casual station clothes. He looked even more ordinary without the uniform. Just a human walking through a station corridor. Nothing threatening. Mr. Chen, she said. Finished with security debriefings? For now, he said. They will have more questions tomorrow, I am sure. May I sit? She gestured to the bench. He sat maintaining a respectful distance. They sat in silence for a moment, watching medical staff move in and out of the bay. "I have been reading about your planet," Kira said finally, "about human history." "Ah," Chen said with a slight grimace. "The violent parts, I imagine? That is usually what people focus on. Is it not accurate?" she asked. "The wars, the weapons, the conflicts?" "It is accurate," he admitted. "But it is not complete. Yes, we fought, constantly. For most of our history, some part of our world was always at war. We invented terrible weapons. We used them on each other." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But we also invented medicine to heal those weapons' damage. We created art and music and literature about the horror of war. We built institutions to prevent conflict and treaties to end it. We learned slowly and painfully that violence was not strength. Restraint was strength." Kira set down her data pad. "Why did you become a diplomatic guard? With your training, you could be a soldier, a warrior. You could have glory and honor in combat." Chen smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I was a soldier, Ambassador. For 15 years. I saw combat on 3 different worlds. I have killed enemies in battle. I have watched friends die. I have all the glory and honor I ever want." He looked at his hands. "Now I serve to prevent others from needing that glory. To stand between peace and violence. To be the weapon that never needs to be drawn." "A noble goal," Kira said. "But is it realistic? Violence exists in the galaxy. Threats like the purifiers will always emerge." "Yes," Chen agreed. "Which is why we train, why we prepare, why we stay capable. But we also choose when and how to use that capability." He gestured toward the medical bay. "Today I could have killed 12 people. My training made it possible. My reflexes and skills could have ended their lives in seconds. But I chose not to. I chose to disable, not destroy. To capture, not kill. That choice is what matters." "The purifiers might not have shown you the same mercy," Kira pointed out. "No, they probably would not have," Chen said. "But I do not base my actions on what my enemies might do. I base them on what I believe is right. If I kill when I do not have to, what makes me different from them?" Kira thought about that. In her culture, defeated enemies were shown mercy, but during battle, warriors fought to win by any means necessary. The idea of deliberately holding back while fighting for your life seemed strange to her, almost foolish. "Your restraint could have gotten you killed," she said. "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged, "but it did not. And now 12 people will face justice instead of death. They will be questioned. We will learn about their organization and prevent future attacks. Their families will not mourn them. They might even be rehabilitated someday, all because I chose the harder path." He stood, stretching slightly. "Ambassador, may I show you something?" Curious, Kira followed him through the station corridors to one of the training facilities. It was late station evening, and the facility was mostly empty. Chen led her to an observation window overlooking a training room. Inside, the other 2 human guards were practicing. "That is Rodriguez," Chen said, pointing to the shorter guard with brown skin. "And that is O'Brien, the one with red hair." Kira watched them move through combat forms. They were not fighting each other, just practicing movements. Strikes, blocks, throws, disarms. Each motion was precise and controlled. They moved like dancers, every step planned, every action deliberate. "We train for 4 hours every day," Chen explained, "even on diplomatic assignments. Especially on diplomatic assignments. We train with weapons from every species we might encounter. We study their fighting styles, their tactics, their strategies. But more importantly, we study their cultures, their values, their perspectives." He pulled up a holographic display on the wall, showing a training curriculum. "First year, we learn hand-to-hand combat from Earth martial arts. Second year, we study alien species physiology and combat adaptations. Third year, we learn weapon systems and zero-gravity combat. Fourth year, we study psychology and de-escalation. Fifth year, we learn diplomatic protocol and cultural studies." He scrolled through page after page of courses. "By the time we qualify for diplomatic guard duty, we have trained for over 12 years after our basic military service." 12 years, Kira repeated in disbelief. "Most guards train for 1 or 2 years at most. Most guards exist for ceremony," Chen said bluntly. "We exist to prevent problems. That requires much more knowledge than just how to fight." He tapped a section of the curriculum.
"See this?"
"Xenopsychology. We study how different species think, what motivates them, what threatens them, When I stood still after Thrask bumped into me on the first day, that was not fear, that was understanding. I knew he was testing me. I knew that any response would be interpreted as either weakness or aggression. So I showed neither. I showed indifference. That confused him more than any reaction would have. Kira remembered that moment and Chen's unsettling calmness. You were analyzing him? Always, Chen confirmed. Every guard analyzes every situation constantly. Where are the exits? Who is agitated? What are the potential threats? What improvised weapons are available? What is the fastest way to protect my principal? It becomes automatic after enough training. He brought up another display, this one showing statistical analysis. Did you know humans have the fastest reaction times of any species in the Council? Not by much, but enough to matter in combat. We also have exceptional hand-eye coordination and spatial awareness. These are evolutionary advantages from being persistence hunters and tool users. We learn to throw rocks accurately enough to bring down prey. That same ability lets us aim weapons with precision that most species find difficult. But that is biology, Kira said. Not training. True, Chen agreed. But we combine that biology with training to maximize its effectiveness. Take our endurance, for example. Humans can run for hours when most species tire in minutes. We can function in extreme temperatures, high and low. We can survive injuries that would kill others. These traits made us successful predators on Earth. Now we use them to be effective protectors. He closed the displays and turned to face her directly. Ambassador Voss, do you understand now why we carry no weapons? Kira thought carefully before answering. Because you are the weapons. Your bodies, your training, your reflexes. You do not need tools because you are the tools. Partly, Chen said, but there is more to it. We do not carry weapons because weapons change how people think. If I carry a gun, I think in terms of shooting. I look for threats to shoot. I solve problems by shooting. But if I carry nothing, I think in terms of all possibilities. I can talk. I can de-escalate. I can physically intervene. I can use the environment. I can adapt to whatever the situation requires. He gestured toward the training room where his colleagues continued their practice. We carry no weapons because weapons are limitations. They define your options. Without weapons, we have infinite options. We can be whatever the situation needs us to be. Negotiator, protector, warrior, whatever serves peace best. Kira finally understood. The humans had not come to the Council unarmed out of weakness or naivety. They had come unarmed out of supreme confidence in their own capabilities. They knew they could handle any situation with or without weapons. So they chose to appear peaceful while remaining deadly. It is a brilliant strategy, she admitted. The Purifiers planned for armed guards. They had tactics for every weapon they expected, but they did not expect guards who could fight without weapons. Your lack of weapons was your advantage. Exactly, Chen said. We are taught to use enemy expectations against them. Let them assume we are weak because we are unarmed. Let them underestimate us. Then use that underestimation to defeat them. It worked today. It has worked many times. Has this happened before? Kira asked. Have your guards fought in other situations? Chen's expression became carefully neutral. There have been incidents during human diplomatic missions. Not many, thankfully. 2 weeks after the Purifier attack, the Galactic Council convened in full session to address what had happened and what should change. Security had been thoroughly reviewed. The maintenance tunnel breach had been sealed. 3 station security officers had been arrested for accepting bribes to provide the Purifiers with inside information. The captured terrorists were being interrogated on various worlds, but the real discussion was about preventing future attacks. About rethinking how diplomatic security worked. The Grand Chamber had been repaired. All signs of the battle removed. Delegates filled their seats once more, though Kira noticed many looked nervously at the floor where the Purifiers had emerged. Trauma took time to fade. The session moderator, the elderly Quellen with silver tendrils, called the meeting to order. Honored delegates, we gathered to discuss Council security protocols in light of recent events. Several proposals have been submitted. We will hear them in order of submission. The first speaker was a Kravik military commander, his scarred face stern on the holographic display. The solution is simple. More guards, better weapons, heavier armor. Create a military presence that cannot be defeated. Murmurs of agreement rippled through certain sections. The traditional approach. Meet force with greater force, a Xanthari diplomat countered. More weapons create more targets. The purifiers knew what weapons to expect because we made them obvious. We need smarter security, not more obvious security. The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted weapon scanners at every entrance. Others wanted guards stationed in every corridor. A few suggested delegations should bring their own security teams with whatever weapons they deemed necessary. Kira listened to it all and felt increasingly frustrated. They were missing the point. They were solving the wrong problem. Finally, Ambassador Okonkwo requested permission to speak. The moderator recognized her, and Sarah stood to address the council. Honored delegates, I have listened to many suggestions today. More weapons, more guards, more barriers. I understand the impulse. We were attacked. We want to feel safe, but I submit that more weapons will not make us safer. Protest erupted from several sections. Sarah waited for quiet before continuing. The purifiers defeated our security because they understood it. They knew what weapons we carried, what tactics we would use, how we would respond. They had detailed intelligence about everything we do, so we responded predictably. But my guards, who carry no weapons, responded unpredictably. That unpredictability saved lives. She gestured to where Marcus Chen and the other human guards stood. I propose we adopt not more weapons, but more adaptability. Train guards to think, not just to shoot. Teach them to use whatever is available. Make them effective without specific tools. If we do this, no enemy can plan for every possibility. Fine words, Thrask rumbled from the Kravik section. But how? Training takes time, and not all species can fight like humans fight. True, Sarah acknowledged, which is why I propose a cultural exchange program. Human guards will train with guards from other species. We will share our methods. In return, we learn from your methods. Every species has unique advantages. Kravik strength, Zenthari speed, Thelian precision, Quellan intelligence. We combine these advantages through training. The moderator leaned forward with interest. You would share human military training with other species? The training is not secret, Sarah said. It is simply intensive. But yes, we would share our methods for diplomatic guard training, not our military secrets, but our approaches to protection, de-escalation, and adaptive combat. She looked around the chamber. The goal is not to create human guards in different bodies. The goal is to create guards who think adaptively, who can handle unexpected situations, who prefer peace but can enforce it when necessary. Each species brings their own strengths to that goal. A Thelian council member stood. Kira recognized him as her own government's representative. Ambassador Okonkwo suggests that Earth diplomatic guards demonstrate their training methods. Perhaps a presentation would help this council understand what is being proposed. I agree, the moderator said. Would the human delegation be willing to provide a demonstration? Sarah glanced at Marcus Chen. He nodded slightly. We would be honored, Sarah said. The session took a recess while the chamber floor was cleared and prepared. Delegates gathered in the viewing galleries looking down at the empty floor below. Kira made her way to the front row, not wanting to miss this. Marcus Chen, Rodriguez, and O'Brien entered the chamber floor. They wore simple training clothes now, not formal uniforms. They carried nothing. The moderator's voice echoed through the chamber. Human guards will now demonstrate their training philosophy. Please observe. What followed was unlike anything Kira had ever seen at a diplomatic session. The three humans began with basic movements, showing hand-to-hand combat techniques. They moved slowly at first, explaining each motion. How to break a grip, how to disarm someone, how to use an attacker's momentum against them. Then they increased speed, demonstrating the same techniques at full combat pace. Their movements blurred. One moment Chen stood still, the next he had Rodriguez in a restraint hold. Then Rodriguez escaped with a twist and counterstrike. O'Brien demonstrated throws that sent Chen tumbling across the floor, only for Chen to roll and come up ready. Now, Chen said, his voice amplified to reach all the delegates. We demonstrate adaptability. Rodriguez, choose any object from the chamber. Rodriguez picked up a ceremonial staff from the Zenthari delegation, one of the decorative items that lined the chamber walls. Chen nodded. Rodriguez attacked with the staff, swinging it at Chen's head. Chen moved inside the swing, caught the staff, and twisted it from Rodriguez's grip in one smooth motion. Any weapon can be taken if you understand leverage and timing, Chen explained. But more importantly, any object can become a tool. He spun the staff experimentally. I was not trained with this specific weapon, but I understand staffs, balance point, range, momentum. The principles are the same across all similar weapons. O'Brien tossed him a Thelian ceremonial blade. Chen caught it, examined it briefly, then demonstrated several strike patterns with it. Different weight distribution than human blades. Different balance. But the fundamental mechanics are similar. You adapt to the tool, not the other way around. They demonstrated this principle with various items from around the chamber. Alien weapons, furniture, even a length of decorative chain. Each time the humans quickly assessed the item and used it effectively, despite having no specific training with that exact object. This is the core of human diplomatic guard training, Chen explained. We do not memorize responses to specific threats. We learn principles that apply to any threat. Then we adapt those principles to whatever situation we face. For the next part of the demonstration, station security brought in training weapons loaded with harmless marker rounds. 3 security officers, volunteers from different species, equipped themselves with these weapons and took positions around the chamber. Now, Chen said, we demonstrate response to armed attackers when you begin unarmed. This is what happened during the Purifier attack. The security officers opened fire. Blue marker rounds streaked toward the human guards. What happened next amazed the watching delegates. The humans moved like water, flowing around the attacks. They used pillars for cover but never stayed still. They closed distances with incredible speed. Within 30 seconds, all 3 humans had disarmed their opponents and now held the training weapons themselves. But then Chen did something unexpected. He handed his weapon back to the security officer. In a real situation, we would secure the weapon. But the goal is not to become armed. The goal is to neutralize the threat. If we can do that without keeping weapons, we prefer it. He demonstrated hand-to-hand takedowns against armed opponents, showing how to control someone without needing to keep their weapon, how to redirect their aim, how to use their own body position against them. It was a masterclass in practical combat. The final demonstration was the most impressive. The moderator asked, "What about multiple attackers in confined spaces? What about zero-gravity environments? What about chemical or biological hazards?" Chen smiled. All part of standard training. Rodriguez, O'Brien, if you would. For the next hour, the human guards demonstrated combat techniques for every environment the Council could imagine. They showed how to fight in zero gravity, using momentum and surfaces. They demonstrated combat while wearing sealed environment suits. They showed techniques for large attackers, small attackers, multiple attackers. Every demonstration emphasized the same principles: adaptation, assessment, control, minimal necessary force. And always the option to choose de-escalation over violence. When the demonstration ended, the chamber fell silent for a long moment. Then Thrask began to clap, the Kravik gesture of respect. Others joined in, each species showing appreciation in their own way. The moderator called the session back to order. Having witnessed this demonstration, Council will now vote on Ambassador Okonkwo's proposal to establish an interspecies diplomatic guard training program. Delegates, register your votes. Kira voted yes without hesitation. Around the chamber, other delegates did the same. When the tally appeared,